Alrighty, well, thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about Qualtrics surveys in Canvas, and I don't have a ton of slides because slides are boring, but there are a couple of things I wanted you to see in writing, just so if you want to take notes, you can. Probably the biggest question for today is, if Canvas has a survey tool, why do I need to use Qualtrics, right? There are a couple of wonderful reasons, and the first couple are aesthetic, really. When you embed a Qualtrics survey in Canvas, it's going to display right on the page of material. It's very visually appealing, hard to miss, whereas a survey link is just going to be a link in Canvas, or it can be something that I decide to just click right through if I put the survey in a module. So it's really hard to miss them, and I just think they just look nice. There are also way fewer clicks when your survey is embedded right on the page. It's literally just right there. So they see the survey questions pop up on the page and they can just start answering them. Whereas if you're using a Canvas survey, you've got to click start survey, click through the survey, in the survey, submit the survey. So it's very click heavy. And we all know that students like to do things quickly. There are also a lot of really cool question types in Qualtrics that are just not available in Canvas. You have to use the Canvas Classic quizzes engine to make a survey. So it's much more limited in the types of questions you can make. Whereas with Qualtrics, there's all kinds of cool interactive questions that you can build. So that's probably the biggest reason to use a Qualtrics survey as opposed to the Canvas tool. And then another cool feature that I like is that it's very easy with Qualtrics to then generate a graphical representation of your data that you could share out to the students. Of course, when we're collecting survey data, a lot of times we do it anonymously. We're collecting things like, we don't really care which specific student said a thing. We just want to know generalities. Like in my class, I have a survey where how do you access Canvas? Do you use the app? Do you use the mobile browser on your phone, or do you use a computer or a laptop? I don't really care which student says what. I just like to get a feel for who is getting into Canvas in what ways. So then I could make a nice little pie chart and I could share it with the class. Hey, 25% of you are using the app. That's interesting. So you can't get that kind of information with the Canvas surveys. They don't let you have any kind of cool pie charts or bar graphs or anything like that, but Qualtrics has all sorts of fun ways you can share your data. Full disclosures up front, the need to knows or the why you might not want to use Qualtrics. The surveys are going to be anonymous unless you put a "what's your name" question in your survey. It's just an anonymous link, and the students can actually submit to it more than one time. So there's no way to know who's doing your survey unless you put a question about who are you. Similarly, you can't assign points without putting that name question in there because you won't know who did the survey. And you can't give points in Canvas without a no submission assignment item. So setting it up might take a few more steps at the beginning of the semester if you want to assign points. With a Canvas survey, you can actually make a graded survey and it can still be anonymous and the points can go in straight to your gradebook. Now, Alex is looking into a Qualtrics LTI in Canvas for me that would actually let you build a graded survey on Qualtrics and bring it into Canvas, and it would go straight to your gradebook. But that's a future thing. It's still in beta testing, so perhaps by next fall, we would have a way to tie it directly to the gradebook, which would be fantastic. And then the last item here, this will make more sense when we start doing this, but if you put an embedded survey in your course and then you roll it over for fall, if you don't make a new version of your survey, then your data is going to compound from spring, right? Because they're accessing the same survey that your students in the spring were using. So your data just builds and builds unless you duplicate your survey and then re-link it in the course. So again, a few more steps at the start of the semester. And maybe that matters and maybe it doesn't. I mean, I don't know, maybe you're tracking data over multiple semesters, in which case you wouldn't want to do that. All right, those are our upfront caveats of what to be aware of when you're using the Qualtrics surveys. Everybody that's faculty and staff can use Qualtrics. I find that the easiest way to get to the login is just to go to the LC homepage, click the For You, and I jump into faculty and staff, and the link is all the way down at the bottom here. So this is the Qualtrics login. We'll give Heidi a minute to jump in here. I'm actually going to backtrack then so I could show her this step in case she's not familiar with this.
Yeah.
Are you with us, Heidi?
Yes. Well, there we go.
Fantastic. So I was just showing how to get to Qualtrics and saying that everybody that's faculty and staff can use Qualtrics. It's a web-based platform. There's no software to download, anything like that. So it's just out there for us to use. And the easiest way to get to it is to go to the LC homepage, click the For You button, make sure you're on faculty and staff, and then all the way down at the bottom, there is a Qualtrics link to log into Qualtrics. And this is going to be your network username and password. So the same username and password you use to log into your email. And then we can get into Qualtrics and start making surveys. Huzzah! Or not. It did this to me last time. Hold on, I might have to reload. Try it again. There, sometimes it does that. Logs in and tells me that I can't get in, and then I click my my shortcut again and magically it loads. All right, so this is the Qualtrics dashboard. I have a lot going on here because I do have some surveys that are out there. So when you first log into this and you've never built a survey before, this is probably going to look pretty blank, which is fine. But this is just at a glance sort of how my surveys are doing out there in the world. And then on the left-hand side, I can see all my surveys that I've created. And this is where I will go to create a new project. You can see surveys that are closed and active. I can click see all projects if I don't see what I'm looking for in that left-hand side. And there's a bunch of settings. I'm not going to get too granular on all of the Qualtrics settings today. If we want to do a separate Qualtrics workshop, that would be wonderful. But for now, we're focusing more on how do we get this into Canvas. But if you want to follow along, that's fantastic. Anyone want to follow along while I'm doing this? Log in, and has everyone gotten to this point where they've logged into Qualtrics? Okay, you want me to wait for you, Marlo?
Sure.
I'll totally wait for you if you want to do it. If you don't want to follow along, that's fine too.
I'll do it.
Okay, let's do it. Hands on. We've only got a couple people in here. It's more fun that way.
All right.
Make sure my recording is still going. Then you can build questions and play around with it.
It said my password was wrong too.
So yeah, and maybe just refreshing. Hopefully it'll let you get right in.
Let's see.
At work.
Yep, there I am.
That's so weird. They do have a lot of great resources for how to really get into all the Qualtrics features. Right up here at the top, there's this little Basecamp thing. And you can, of course, just Google, how do I make this kind of a question in Qualtrics? And you will find information out there. But it's more fun to get in and play with it together. So we are going to create a new project in the bottom left here. And there are all kinds of guided projects and templates and things that you can look through. On the left-hand side, you can actually sort of, okay, I'm going to measure students, and it will give me some customized templates based on measuring students. You know, you can use all kinds of filters, but I just like to do the old from scratch survey. By default, when you log into Qualtrics, the format for the survey is going to be this really nice looking LC template. So it's got that blue banner and it has the little clock tower logo on it. So it'll look nice when you're done. You don't have to spend a lot of time making it look pretty. So we're going to do a survey from scratch. And again, there's more info, learn how to create a survey, but we're going to then click get started. It will ask us to title our project here, sample survey. And we are going to just create a blank survey project and just click create project. If I start to go too fast because you're following along, just say, whoa, slow down, and I will slow down. Create project. Now, contrary to it saying we're going to create a blank project, it actually loads a default multiple choice question in there for us, which is fine. We can either use it or delete it. Here we are in our building area now. At the top, if you need to change the name of your survey, you can just click into the field and you can rename it. You'll notice as you're kind of clicking around in here, everything is very interactive and really easy to work with. You're literally just clicking where it says click to add data. The first thing I want to do, because I care in my class about knowing which students have completed it, because I want to give them some extra credit, is we're going to create a question that just says, what's your name? So you're going to add new questions using this nice little add new question button here. And it's going to be a simple text entry question. This is what you would use for, 1 or 2 words, short answer, or even a full-on essay. Select text entry, and then I will click to write the question text. What? Hello, get into the field. What is your name? Or even better for students, please enter your name if you want extra credit. Right? That gets their attention. Smileys or not, and then you just click out of it, and there is your question. I want this to be the first question in my survey, so it's really easy to move things. If I hover my mouse over pretty much anywhere in the field, I get the little crosshairs and I can click and drag to relocate this to the first question in the survey. Don't worry too much about the numbers here. When it's delivered to the students, if you tell it to number the questions, those actually will not say 2 and then 1. It corrects itself. Other things you can do when you have a question selected, you'll notice it's got a blue box around it. So this is the question I have selected. On the left-hand side, there are some options for this particular question. And for this one, since I want them to put their name in, I can require them to put something in this field before they can submit the survey. So on the left-hand side where it says response requirements, I'm going to turn on add requirement, and I'm going to leave it at force a response. You can request one, which is kind of like the nice way of forcing it. But I want it to be a forced response. You have to put something in this box. Now you could put mac and cheese. I guess if you don't want extra credit, go for it. But they cannot submit the survey to you until they have put something in this box. And then you will notice over on the right-hand side, it puts an asterisk on this question. And that's just a nice visual reminder for you as the question builder that you have a required response on this item. And if I click down into this one, you'll notice that I get a little bit different options on the left-hand side. So multiple choice is really interesting. When you add a new question and you select multiple choice, it's going to default to just let me pick one thing, but you can, on the left-hand side, select allow multiple answers. And that's going to change it from radio buttons to checkboxes, so then they can pick as many things as you put in the list. So there is no multiple answer option. It's just multiple choice, and then you click this little radio button. There's a couple of ways to add to the number of choices that you fill in. You can use the options on the left and just click the plus button, or as you're filling them out and you get to the bottom, if you hit an enter or return, it will automatically create another one. So you can really rapid fire click through the list and make your choices. And again, to put the text in here, you just click into the box. You can have more than one favorite food as far as I'm concerned. You get the idea. Ooh, spell meat correctly, not phonetically. And so on and so forth. If you have a selection that you end up not needing, when you click into it, you get this little drop down and you can just say remove choice. And you can also move the choices around if you don't want to just retype them. I'm just going to remove this one. And there we are. So there's my multiple choice. There's a couple of other formatting things you can do. You can have a horizontal alignment or be in a column. So depending on the number of things you're putting in this survey, one of those alignments might look more visually appealing. And then again, I can force a required response on this item if I click the add requirement and select that option. All right. So we've got 2 questions already. Woohoo, go us. There are a lot of question types in here, probably too many for us to go over today, but there are a couple in here. Like I mentioned before, one of the perks of using Qualtrics instead of Canvas surveys is you have some really cool question types that are not an option in Canvas. So if we add new question, one that people like a lot is the matrix table, which you may know as a Likert scale. They call it a matrix table in this system. This is one where people can rank some things, whatever the case may be. Oh, my keyboard is really slow. I'm on a food kick today, apparently. So then I would say gross. I like it. I would. Okay, so you can have your ranks there. And then if you need something in between these ranks, if you click into one of the fields and hit return, it's going to add a column to the right. So then I could say, depends on how you want to get, how many things you want to get. Oops, learn how to spell. All right, so you can have your ranks and then you would have your statements. I can't type when people are watching me. It's just a, so on and so forth. And if, of course, when I hit return, it's going to let me add more statements, so I can add as many statements as I want here. All righty. So that is a question type that's not available in Canvas. And these are pretty common when you're gathering data from people, right? You want to know a scale of how they feel about something. That's a good one for like start of the term, end of the term. How do you feel about your level of knowledge in this area? And then you can do it again at the end of the term with a different survey and compare the results. Questions on that guy? Again, that's the matrix table, AKA our buddy Likert scale. Slider is an interesting one. Click on slider. And I say it's interesting because you cannot adjust these numbers across the top. So whatever you're surveying would need to be something that had to do with the numbers 1, 0 through 100. So I don't exactly know what that would be, but maybe you're asking, you know, how many slices of pizza will you eat if we have a pizza party? Or I don't even know. But again, you're just going to have your question text at the top and then your choices across the bottom. You don't have to have 3. So if you click into a choice and you don't want it, again, you've got that remove choice from the dropdown, or on the left-hand side in your settings, you can adjust the number of statements using the buttons over here. You can have bars, you can have stars. That's kind of cool. So if you were doing a fun visual ranking thing, rank the movie we watched in class. Lots of options. I guess you can, sorry, I'm a big fat liar. Under the scale points, you can totally change that right over here. Min, max, number of decimals, grid lines. Didn't look that close when I was initially playing with this. So and you know, these questions are neat because they are interactive. They, you know, you get to move a little bar. It's cool. More fun ones. Rank order is a nice one. You put a series of items in here in whatever order you want, and then you tell the students place these in the order that you know, from favorite to least favorite, or most intimidating to least intimidating, whatever it is, whatever the case may be. All right, and we will actually look at how these look in the student view when we put it into our class. Pizza. Apparently I'm hungry. I can add. And there's a couple of different options here. So you have drag and drop. You have radio buttons, text box, select box. I like the drag and drop because, again, you're even that engagement where the student's clicking and dragging and rearranging things. And on all of these, of course, you can force the response. So there's a rank one. What else have we got? Side by side. I personally couldn't think of why I would use this, but that's just limited to my own paltry imagination. So I'm sure there are fantastic ways you could use this sort of thing based on your subject matter. Again, you can have more columns, fewer columns. You can change all kinds of things on the settings in the left here. But just another example of a question type that is definitely not available in Canvas. This little graphic slider is kind of fun. He just makes this little There's a gauge. So as you slide it up, it's like that. But then you have a couple of other options. So you could have questions about temperature or how do you feel about this topic? Is this a red, green, or yellow topic for you? That's pretty fun. Rate how much you love taking tests. So all sorts of fun things in the graphic question. And pick, group, and rank is a neat one too. It lets you designate some categories for these boxes and then list a whole bunch of items. And then when the students interact with it, they are dragging and dropping the items from the left into the corresponding boxes on the right. Off the top of my head, again, nothing fantastic comes to mind, but I'm sure you could come up with all sorts of cool things to do with this. So, don't. Oh, see, look at that. It was even smart. Gave me it predicted what I wanted to do there and put a like, neither like or dislike situation. So that's kind of cool. All right. As you can see, they're fairly intuitive. Definitely check out the options on the left-hand side each time you select a question, because there are lots of different things you can do. You can do hotspots, heat map, that designates an area that you click on. I haven't done the CAPTCHA thing or the highlight, but they're pretty easy to figure out once you start playing with them. Questions, comments, thoughts on this piece? It's pretty cool. Okay. Now we're going to bring this bad boy into Canvas and make it show up on a page of content. You can publish it at this point if you want. That's fine. You do have to publish it before you can get your link to your survey. But at this point, you don't want to copy the link because we're going to be copying some HTML and putting it into Canvas before we get our link. So I'm just going to click OK here. And later when we come back to this, where we find our link is going to be under the Distributions tab at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the Distributions tab. And I'm going to select the anonymous link area on the left. And we're just going to leave that hanging there for now because we're going to come back to this. And we're going to go into Canvas. Now, very quickly, I'll show you what I mean when I say I think they look nicer in Canvas. Here's just a standard Canvas survey that I've linked to on a page of content. So I have a bunch of stuff about the dashboard views in Canvas. And down at the bottom, I just made a take this survey link. It would be very easy for a student to overlook this thing, right? They're scrolling along, they just see it's a bunch of links down here, whatever. I'm not going to click on that. And if I do click on it, then I have to click through the survey interface. Jump into student view. So it's pretty click heavy. Take the survey, take the survey, take the survey, submit the survey, and then I can click to the next page in the module. So lots of clicks, at least 4. Or if I just put the survey directly in the module, oh, wait, don't look at that, that's cheating, that was where it was. Then I can just go straight to it and I can do it at that point. But if I put it in here as an embed, what I end up getting is this nice little survey that's just right here on the page, right? So the embed code is making this little box that pulls my survey in from Qualtrics and displays it right here on the page. I don't have to click anything to start it. It's just, there's the question. There are my choices. One thing I recommend, especially if you have a survey that's got multiple questions, because this box will scroll as you have a bunch of questions, is putting some instructions above it that say, make sure you scroll to the bottom of the survey and click the blue arrow to submit your responses. Otherwise, they might not know, like, okay, I've clicked the button. Okay, I'm good. I must be done, right? But they have to actually click the arrow in order to submit their data. So this is a customizable message that I put in there. Fantastic. But doesn't that look nice, right? It's just right there on the page. They can't I can't miss it. It's very slick. And you can literally put a survey anywhere in Canvas that you have access to the rich content editor. So you could put a survey in a discussion board. You could put a survey in the instructions in an assignment. You could put it on a page of content like I did in here. Here's another one where I asked them, that's that one where I asked them how they get into Canvas. So I use a computer, boom. Very cool. All righty. How do we do this, Angela? You've enticed me. Now I need to know. I'm going to just pick a random page in my course, and I'm picking one that has content on it so that when we go look at the HTML, you can see what your page is more likely going to look like. If you start with a blank page, it's really easy to put the code in because there's nothing else on the page, right? But a lot of times we're going to want to add a survey to a page that already exists. So I'm going to go into edit mode. Is that size okay? Because I can zoom in if that's too small. Is that okay? Thumbs up? Okay. And we're actually going to work with the HTML. So to get into HTML view, you need to click the HTML toggle button here that's in the bottom right of the editor. And you will get this, which to anyone that's not experienced with HTML looks very confusing, and there's a lot going on here. They did make some changes to the editor, which is great. Now the HTML is color coded. So anything you see here that's in green or blue or red, that's actual HTML code. That's what's telling the page what to do with all the text. And then the black text is the text that shows up on your page when you're in this view. So when you're in here, if you make a change to the black text, that's going to change what's on your page. So if I'm looking at all of this and I'm thinking like, man, how do I even know where my survey goes? I have a little cheat for you. We're going to go back to the visual view. And let's say I want to put the survey at the end of this bulleted list here. Just going to hit some line returns, and I'm going to type in all caps, put survey here. Now, when I go into the HTML view, I can scroll through here, and it is much easier to identify that capital letter phrase that I typed in. And when I'm in HTML view, I can hit some line returns, and it's not going to change how my page looks. This just kind of gives me some visual breathing room to work with this, and I don't feel quite so overwhelmed. So this is where I'm going to put the survey. You have to have one tiny little piece of code. It's really, really simple. I'm going to drop it into the chat so you can copy it yourself, and then I can also email it out to everybody too. But this is the one line of code that you need to do this fabulous process. I'm going to bring this over here and make it so we can actually read it and just really basically kind of explain what this is doing. So the iframe is building that box on your page that's going to pull your survey into the page on in your course. You can actually do this with a web page as well. If you're someone who has access to edit web pages, you can go into the HTML and you can put iframe code out on a web page too. But because pages in Canvas are basically web pages. Then it says source URL here. This is where we're going to put the link to our survey eventually. And then this is telling us that the box we're putting on our page is going to be 800 pixels by 600 pixels, wide versus tall here. You can kind of think of pixels, every 100 pixels is about an inch. So this is essentially an 8-inch by 6-inch box that I'm creating on the page. And if you find for whatever reason that that's too big, too small, whatever, then you know that if you come in here, you can adjust the width. So 1,000 pixels would be 10 inches wide. 800 is a pretty safe number in this day and age for width so that people don't have to scroll side to side. The height is another matter. You could make it taller so they don't have to do as much scrolling. You could make it shorter if you don't want it to look quite so big on your page. That's totally up to you. I just kind of went with a nice generic rectangle here, but you can come in and fiddle with that, and so you understand what those numbers are doing. So we need to grab this whole thing from bracket to bracket and copy it. And then we're done with that. You can move it away. And we're going to put it where it says put survey here. So I need to click and highlight that whole phrase. And then you can either right click and paste, or if you're on a Windows machine, Control V, or Mac people, it's Command V, and paste that code onto your page. You'll see that it turns green and blue because it is HTML. There it is. That's step one. So if we were to go back into the visual view, you would see this. Whoa, what is going on here? Like there's nothing. You made a box, but you didn't give me anything to put in the box. It's very confusing, Angela. What are you doing? Go back to my code. Now we're going to grab our web link to our survey. So we will go back to Qualtrics. And again, I went to distributions to get to the anonymous link area, and I just click copy survey link. So now it's copied on my clipboard. And I can come back into Canvas. And I'm going to do a similar thing. Now you need to be very careful not to select the quotations. Those need to stay there. So you're just going to highlight URL here and then do another paste. So we should see something that looks kind of like this. Your source is, and then that's the link to our survey. And this is what you would change if you rolled your course over to fall and you built a new survey. You would come in here and you would have to scan for the iframe code and then replace that link with your survey that you duplicated for fall. It's super easy to duplicate a survey. I'll show you that too. Now, if we go into the fancy view, there's my beautiful little survey, and I'm going to save it so we can look at it more closely. So here it is. Student can enter their name if they want to get that extra credit. What's my favorite food? I'm a big fan of these things. I like it. Veggies are gross. Pasta's gross. I would die without ice cream. You know. But you can see here how some of these interactive questions work. Here's that scale question. Here's the ranking. Click and drag. Very slick. Just go through and respond to the questions. This one is that I don't like or dislike, and I dislike candy or ice cream. And of course, you can have as many in each box as you want, but I really like that one. I don't know why. I think that's fun. All sorts of applications for that. And then I get down to the bottom. Now, again, this is one I would want to put at the top of the survey. Make sure you scroll all the way down to the bottom, because as a student, I might not realize that I have to do that. Once they've done a couple surveys, then of course they figure it out pretty quick, but we have to tell them. Otherwise they go, well, I didn't know. How come I didn't get the extra credit? Submit and done. Thank you for taking the survey. Fabulous. And that's it. That's the glory of embedding surveys. And even though you're playing with the HTML, it's not scary, right? That was pretty straightforward. One little line and then your link. Do you want me to do it one more time, or are you feeling good about it? You want to take a minute to try it out yourself if you made a survey before I show you the next thing? It's totally fine if you.
That's really helpful. It's straightforward to me, but I was typing my own instructions while you were talking, so I feel like I can follow that now.
Awesome. Okay, you're not done though. I'm not cutting you loose just yet because I want to show you a couple more things back in Qualtrics.
Yes, please.
We're going to jump over to Qualtrics, and I'm going to go back to my dashboard by clicking on the little XM logo in the upper left. So let's say it's fall semester. I've copied my course over. Now I need to duplicate my survey so that I don't compound my results. Here's my sample survey. It's as simple as clicking on these dots here and saying copy project. Boop. And I can rename it. Of course, you'll see in my list there, I always put the semester and the year so I know. And this one would be my fall 2022. And I just hit copy project. And now I have my copy that's ready to put into my new class. So I go to my survey. And if I need to make any changes, maybe, I want to remove a question or I need to reword something that was confusing to the students, of course, I can make all those changes before I publish it. It's not really liking my score, but that's because I didn't finish most of the questions. And then when this one is ready for fall, I publish this guy. And because I've already put my embed code into Canvas, I could copy the link from here. I don't have to repeat that iframe part. I just have to grab my new link. So I would copy my link, jump back into my class, find my survey page. Now, another little cheat is, again, I could just say survey is here, and that's going to help me find it when I go into the HTML view. So I scroll through all the stuff. Oh, okay, cool. Here's my survey. There's my iframe code. I was able to find it really easily with that capital letters. And then I just grab the old link, take it out of there, and paste my new one in there. And now it's pointing to my fall survey. So it's not terrible. You just have to remember to do it. So that can go on your checklist. And then you can take this away. You can delete that so that's not still on your page. And now I'm pointing to the fall survey. Okay. So the big thing to remember is it really is handy to put that capital phrase in there because you can just jump right to it. All right, the other thing I mentioned that was cool about using Qualtrics is that you can share some graphical representations of the data with students if you wanted to. So I'm going to go back to a survey that actually has results. Otherwise, it's not super interesting. I'm going to go to my dashboard views survey for this spring. And since it's anonymous, it's okay to show you guys. And I'm going to look at the results tab. If I want to see the actual student names, I'm going to look at the data and analysis tab. And of course, I would have to have a question that said, what's the student's name? But it's going to show you in a column every question and then each recorded response to that question. So I would have a column here that said, you know, Angela, Bob, Sarah, and then what that person had selected for which dashboard view is your favorite. There's only one question on here, so it's not super interesting to look at, but that's in the data and analysis tab. Then if you did have duplicates that you wanted to get rid of, maybe a student did the survey twice because they were trying to get double the extra credit, you can come over to the actions and you can delete responses if you need to. That way, if you make a nice little pie chart, it's accurate. So that's under data and analysis, and then results is where we can get the fun graphic stuff. Of course, it depends on the nature of the question, what kind of graphics you can generate, but with a sort of a multiple choice situation, you can get a nice pie chart or a bar graph. So if I click on this thing, I get a bunch of options on the right-hand side. And here I can change the visualization type. So I could make it as a nice little table if I wanted to. I could do a bar chart. That's not super meaningful to me if I'm talking about percentage of students who like a certain thing. If you scroll down, of course, you can change the color and the legend values and all that fun stuff. But I think the pie chart's probably the best way to represent the way students get into Canvas, or in this case, this is the what's your favorite dashboard view. So 33% of them like list view and 66% of them like card view. There's some options here to change the shape of the pie. You can just show a count or you can show percentages. So it depends on how you want your data to appear. And you can change the colors. You do want to be careful with your color selection that you don't have like too warm colors. Certain visual impairments that might be difficult for a person to see. So nice contrasting warm with cool. So I don't know why it doesn't update these. See, I've changed the color, but it still has purple, which is really weird. I couldn't figure out why it was doing that earlier either. Maybe if I refresh, it'll wake up. Yeah, so I had to refresh it in order for it to recognize that I had changed that color. And since nobody picked recent activity, we don't see any color for that, which is okay. There's a couple ways you can share this data out. Up at the top, you can share report, and you could say, I want it as a PDF or a Word document. I could even have it as a PowerPoint slide. I take the lazy way. If this is the only thing I want to share, I just do a screenshot. So you could use your Windows snipping tool, or on a Mac, it's Shift, Command, and the number 4 to get your screenshot tool. And then I can just grab this thing here Boop, boop. And then if I wanted to share it with the students, I could come back to the page that had the survey on it and edit the page. And underneath it, I could say, whoop, results are in. Just do my little upload image. Find my little chart. Now I'm sharing a chart that has data that is meaningful to the course. So I do need to describe the chart data for someone who can't interact with this image or can't see this image. So I would say something like 66% of students like card view, and 33% like list view. Recall, when we're making alt text, we don't care about what the chart looks like. What we care about is that the alt text is conveying the information that is shared in the chart. So we don't need to say, this is a circular pie graph that looks like Pac-Man, that's yellow and blue. We don't care about that, right? We want to know that there are 60% of students who like card view and 30% that like list view. Then it comes in here as this ginormous thing. It's huge. So if you don't know this, if you click on an image, you can go to your image options and you can resize it. I'm just gonna say medium. There we go. So I could very easily share some data with the class after we've collected it all, which is pretty snazzy. You cannot do that with the surveys in Canvas. There it is. Yay. So fun way to use this tool. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. That's the perfect amount of time for questions. What do you have? Anybody? There are a lot more settings in Qualtrics that I didn't get into because when you bring a survey into Canvas, you don't really care about some of the things that you can do if you were to be sharing it out on the web or, through email or whatever. But off the top of your heads now, are you thinking of ways you can use this? Like, what comes to mind? What kind of surveys are you thinking you would put in your class? Volunteer from the audience?
Well, honestly, I'm doing this because I joined the faculty inquiry group. And so I want to use this for that research project.
Nice.
Yes.
Like I said, if you can take that same code that you dropped into Canvas and you can put that into the HTML of a what are we even using now? What's it called now? Not I'm having a total brain fart. The web page editor that we use for our school.
Bronco?
Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that. But if you are an editor with Umbraco, you can put that iframe code in your HTML and you could embed the survey on the LC website too.
Nice. Good intel.
Yeah. Anybody else? Thoughts? Sharing how they might want to use this?
Well, something I'm wondering about, I actually haven't used surveys very much. And when I do, I'm usually asking for more narrative responses, like text-based. So I'm wondering if Qualtrics is useful for that, or if there are ways to capture those kinds of responses that you could share to Canvas that would be helpful. Or
for more text-based questions, you probably could get away with just building the survey in Canvas because you don't have a need for all that interactive stuff. And so why take extra steps, right? And you're not going to be generating a visual with that kind of data because it's text-based. So in that case, the Canvas survey would probably be better. And those are really easy to make. I don't need a full workshop to show you that. So if you make a survey, you're just going to go make a quiz. You have to pick classic quizzes. Otherwise you can't make a survey. And then your options are under quiz type, you're going to change it from graded quiz to either graded survey or ungraded survey. And either way, you could set it to be anonymous or not. The big difference with the ungraded versus graded is if they do it, you determine an amount of points. And if they do it, they get the points. If they don't do it, they don't get the points. There's no scale of how many points they get. It's just full credit once you do the survey. Gotcha. So the ungraded survey, so depends on, whether you're giving them points or not. And actually, if you're going to do, I like to remind people, if you're going to do something for extra credit, make sure you're leaving the points as 0. You don't want to put 20 in there because then it counts toward the total for the course. So leave it as 0 and then you enter 20, it'll add the extra credit. And then you just make your standard essay question like you would in any Canvas quiz. So that's
but if I wanted to have a combination of types, like some Likert scales, then it would probably be, but well, I'd have to do it in
You would have to
Qualtrics,
do
right?
it in Qualtrics. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that sort of situation, I could definitely see just sticking with Canvas. There's not really a need for them to just be able to see, oh, there, it's right there on the page and I can type right into it from here. It's not a big deal to have those extra clicks to get to the sort of the essay interface.
Yeah. And Heidi, I'm also thinking about using mine for the faculty inquiry project.
I got several people. Who else? Some of the nurses have asked me about, I think it's the same thing, have asked me about using Qualtrics for that as well. So if we need to have a Qualtrics only party, we can, and we can come and hang out in the CTL, and we can actually build surveys, and I can just hover around and help you with what I know. I'm by no means a Qualtrics guru, but we can figure it out together.
Cool.
Yeah, and just a FYI from our office too is we actually we try to put on a PDT for Qualtrics every semester.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to step on your toes there. So if you're already doing
No, that's not at all what I was saying. I was just saying,
yeah. If
if you'll probably actually see an announcement from HR in the next month or two that we're going to put one on. So feel free to join our office too. I wasn't trying to step on your toes, Andrew.
No, I mean, I don't want to step on your guys' toes. If that's from your department, then definitely they will know way more than I will know. Not gonna lie.
Hey, the more the merrier.
Right?
It feels like when I do a PDT, I always come away with knowledge that I didn't have before. So I'm all for that.
Sweet. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions, thoughts, ways this could be useful? I always think of like maybe in a literature class, you can use this to quickly pull like, what do you guys want to read this semester? Here are your choices, or something like that. I'm actually thinking of doing a before and after survey in my class for fall. What's your current comfort level with using Canvas? Those kinds of things. And then at the end, how do you feel about it now? I ask them at the end, how do you feel about Canvas? But I don't do a pre-test, which would be good to just have an idea. Did this class actually make you feel more confident using Canvas? So, yeah.
I like that idea. I'm so inconsistent with pre and post test collection, but like in my ideal world, I would do that every semester. Right?
Well, and it's really cool because if you build the survey, I mean, your pre-test and your post-test should be the same, right? So once you build it, then all you have to do to duplicate it is just copy your project, which is cake. So yeah, you can do the same thing in Canvas. You can duplicate a survey in Canvas. Let me double check that because I say that and then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe you can't. There's a survey. I am a big fat liar. Look at that. You cannot, maybe it's because it's published. Let me unpublish it. Whoops. Maybe I am a big fat liar. I thought you could duplicate them, but maybe you can't. Whoa, why are you freaking out on me? I said, oh, I can't unpublish it because somebody did it. Huh. I thought you could. Well, that's another bonus for Qualtrics then is it's much easier to duplicate it than in Canvas having to rebuild the whole thing. Yeah, you can't. Look at that. No duplication for you. Fine. Definitely a plug for Qualtrics.
Well, and especially if you wanted to look at something over multiple classes and multiple semesters. Yeah. Because you could just have them going to the same link in that case, right? Rather than duplicating it.
So from spring to fall,
Mm-hmm.
have the same survey, you don't have to relink it. Well, and then again with your copying, if you were going to use the same survey in all of your online classes, then it makes it super easy to generate. I'm teaching 5 online classes. I need 10 surveys. Boom, boom, boom. Here I have 10 surveys. And then you just change the name to the class and you're good to go. And you can organize your surveys into folders and stuff. under the projects, you can see them all and you can create folders to sort things out. So yeah, it's pretty cool. They've made some cool changes to the interface since 2017 was the longest time back that I've used it.
Yeah, they have. It's really changed a lot.
Mm.
Well, thanks, Angela. I really like your idea about the pre and post test response in Canvas. I'll definitely be using that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I always like to throw in a little something personalized to the class along with the SCE too. And so I'm using Qualtrics for that this year too, just so I can have some more interesting question types.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's usually what I tell people, because there's a lot of instructors that, want to have their own kind of customized questions to add to the SCEs, but, we're there to kind of provide just like a standardized measure. So that's always the alternative I give is Qualtrics.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and that's easy to just at the end, right on the page. They can't miss it. So